Jonathan Taylor is one of the biggest Dynasty winners in the month of August. We'll tell you why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. And on today's show, we're taking a look at the biggest winners and losers based off the latest ADP that we have from Dynasty League football. And Fabs, I want to start with Jonathan Taylor, somebody that I have in just about every single Dynasty League that I play in right now. He's up to RB7, on Dynasty League football, 23rd overall. And I couldn't be more excited that Daniel Jones, well, I wish he was a better quarterback, but I'm excited that Daniel Jones is going to be starting over Anthony Richardson, because this means that Taylor's value should go way, way up.
First off, I'm joining you from Las Vegas today, which is why this is a hotel room at the Fantasy Football World Championships. Did a great event with the women of fantasy football also yesterday. So it's great to see some friends. And I will be drafting today in a Beat Fabs competition against Dean Cain. So I will be the kryptonite that wipes out Superman. But yeah, back to Jonathan Taylor. I guess I know you're excited about it, but I guess maybe I'm a little bit surprised that he's going now ahead of like Trevion Henderson and Kyron Williams and RJ Harvey and James Cook, who are all younger than Jonathan Taylor. To me, I like him more for the next couple of years long term. You know, we're getting into the point where he's 26, a couple of more years, you know, when you get into that like 29-year-old age range for a running back, typically may see some regression from a statistical perspective. So I got to be honest with you, like as excited as you are, I'm surprised he's going ahead of some of these like other younger running backs. Not that Taylor's old, because he's not. I mean, he's still in the prime of his career, but he has had some injury issues. What I'm wondering, Marcus, is with Daniel Jones as the quarterback, why do you like Taylor more? Is it because he's going to open up the offense a little bit more? Because typically when you have a mobile quarterback back there, that also is a benefit to a running back. Now, maybe Richardson takes some touchdowns here and there from Jonathan Taylor at the goal line. Is that like the big win for you with Daniel Jones being under center for JT?
Couple things. Number one, again, I want to preface everything I'm about to say by saying I don't think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback at all. I think he is a very bottom tier starting quarterback in the league. I'm just not sure Anthony Richardson is a quarterback in the NFL. And we saw last year, like this Colts offense, because Richardson is such a poor passer, they had trouble sustaining drives. And it's awfully hard to score touchdowns, Fabs, when you're not crossing the 50-yard line ever. And that's kind of what the Colts offense was. So I think Daniel Jones is going to at least help keep this thing moving a little bit. And we've seen this track record from Richardson that when Richardson and Taylor are playing together, Taylor's averaging about, I got the numbers right here, 15.9 PPR points per game. But in the 41 starts that Taylor has without Richardson, 18.5 PPR points per game. And a lot of it just comes down to targets. Like he was averaging 2 fewer targets per game when Richardson was a quarterback, because generally these mobile quarterbacks don't throw the ball underneath, and they certainly don't do it very often when they're not accurate. So I just think we're going to see more target volume for Taylor. And I just think the offense is going to be overall better.
That is not a glowing endorsement for Anthony Richardson anywhere else in the league. Boy, the Colts made a huge mistake, it seems, especially based on your analysis. And I wonder what's going to happen with the head coach in the front office there after the season, because this is likely not going to be any kind of championship run for the Colts. But
no.
Jonathan,
real quick, don't you feel like the reason why the Colts made this decision, I think they both know. I mean, I think like Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen know that Richardson's not the future at quarterback, and neither is Daniel Jones. But they have to play the quarterback that like can help develop AD Mitchell and Tyler Warren and like give their offense a chance. And I think that's probably Daniel Jones, who can at least help them be competent on that side of the ball.
I mean, it's the lesser of two evils.
Yes.
You and I have talked about how we think Daniel Jones probably doesn't have as high of a ceiling from a fantasy perspective, but he has a better floor. And with Jones under center, people are going to feel a little bit more confident starting and playing and drafting players like, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Down. I love Tyler Warren. You guys all know that I'm a big fan. I think he's going to have a really good rookie campaign. Not Brock Bowers, not Sam Laporta, but still very good. And listen, I mean, Jonathan Taylor is, like I said, in the prime of his career. So I'm not surprised that he's moved up a little bit, but I am surprised that he's moved up past some younger running backs who haven't hit their primes yet.
And the reason, real quick, for me, why I think that's happened is because most dynasty managers look at the running back position as like a 2-year position because so much changes over 2 years. And frankly, Fabs, there's just very few running backs that I would take over the next 2 years over Jonathan Taylor. It's all the guys that we mentioned all the time, Gibbs, Bijan, Genty, Omarion Hampton. And now you're into that kind of like the Saquon tier. It's like Saquon, Jonathan Taylor. These are both older running backs. I'm using quotations, but I think we project both those guys to be awesome this year, and they're clear-cut RB1s this year and next year.
Well, I'm not saying that Saquon's going to be awesome this year. I'm not.
Well, that's different.
I'm not in. I'm not in on Saquon being like elite this season again. Right. I could be wrong. We're going to find out. But
I want another running back. I wanted to talk to you about real quick.
Yeah.
No player in fantasy football and in dynasty football has changed their value more over the last 30 days than Chase Brown, who is up 17 spots from 48th overall to 31st overall. Right now, he's being valued as RB12 in dynasty leagues. Mm-hmm. First of all, why do you think there's been such a boost in his ADP? And are you buying him at RB12?
Yeah, 25 years old. He's going ahead of some of the rookies, coming out, Henderson, RJ Harvey. I'd rather have James Cook. He's going ahead of James Cook. But I think people are seeing that he's going to be a featured back. Like last season, we weren't sure Zach Moss was going to be there. He's no longer obviously there. And I think what people also are remembering too is just Cincinnati's had a pretty good stretch of running backs have success from a fantasy perspective. Now I get it, different coaching staffs, different personnel, but Joe Mixon was very good. And the Bengals have had a lot of good fantasy running backs. And I wonder if people just think that Chase Brown is the next one in line in those tiger stripes to put up some pretty good numbers. The offense is fantastic. So he's going to be put in a position to score. You would think that Jamar Chase is going to see some touchdown regression because he had 17 last year. And, also Chase Brown was the 10th best running back in fantasy football last year, and he only started 10 games. So, and he played 16. So remember, he wasn't even the dude at the beginning of the season last season. That was Zach Moss. Now you're going to get a full 17 with Chase Brown as the dude. So I think that's big. And I think that might be part of the reason why. Obviously, he's very young. When you're in an offense like that, that's going to put you in a position to succeed. We saw it in the last preseason game. He got a goal line look, scored a touchdown. Those aren't going to go to Taj Brooks. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be Chase Brown. And I think that's what people are looking at, honestly. And Joe Burrow is never going to steal a goal line touch from a running back.
Nope.
Like very few opportunities. It's not like Josh Allen, with James Cook situation or Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. So I think that's part of the reason why his stock is rising a bit.
It just feels like it's been a trickle of good news for Chase Brown. Like, Zach Moss, got banged up. He's not on the roster anymore. I don't think they're going to have Taj Brooks in there a ton. And I also think the Trey Hendrickson stuff, because he still hasn't signed and everybody's watched this Bengals defense in preseason be awful, the Bengals are going to have to score 30 plus points, almost said 35 plus points a game just to stay competitive. And that's great news for Chase Brown. Burrow's also healthier now than he's ever been before, knocking on wood. It just seems like it's been nothing but good news for Chase Brown. And when you start trying to value some of these running backs in the same range, whether it's Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Travion Henderson, it's hard to poke that many holes in Chase Brown.
No, I'm in on him. No matter what, if it's dynasty or if it's redraft. I mean, now that we're getting into late August, you and I are starting to do a lot more drafts. I did one yesterday. I'm going to do one today. I have one nearly every other day for the rest of the month of August and into September. And I'm starting to see Chase Brown go at the end of round 1.
Oh, yeah.
So
I don't doubt it.
So the hype is, I mean, listen, it might not be, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt hype.
Bill Krosky Merritt. We got to update with the name.
But
Bill
it's Ja'Cory. I get it. You either call him by his full government name or you call him Bill. That's it.
The point is, buy Chase Brown in your dynasty leagues. I think this RB12 price is actually still a very fair price. I would pay up to top 10 prices for him. So Chase Brown, big winner. Let's talk about some receivers who lost a ton of value over the last 30 days. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, Fabs and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. And to kick it off, they've just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. And with the season right around the corner, now is the time to gather up your league mates and give this new mode a try. And if you're still into the classics, you can play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league instead. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Fabs, let's talk about some players who have seen some major drops in their ADP. We're going to ignore Quinshon Judkins because that one was pretty obvious. He's the player who has actually seen their value go down the most over the last month. That's obvious. But the next one to me is fascinating. It's Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders. Just a month ago, 41st overall. Now he is down to 55th overall. In terms of receivers. We're talking about wide receiver 30 for Terry McLaurin. Is that too low?
I don't think so. A couple of things. First off, anytime a player, no matter what the position, has a holdout this long, you have to worry about injuries going into the upcoming season. I love Terry McLaurin. I think he's a super talented player, and he really rose to new heights last year because he actually had a quarterback in Jaden Daniels. But he's also coming off a career year. And you know me, I am the big fan of the regression monster narrative. And so there's going to be regression. Deebo Samuel Sr.'s in the mix now too. And so I do worry that his numbers from last year, especially the touchdowns, there's going to be a regression to the mean. And I also do worry about injuries a little bit because he's going to be 30 in September. So it's not young. Maybe we get 2-3 more good years from him, maybe. And I'm a little concerned about this season. Like I said, I don't know how much longer he's going to hold out. He's healthy now because the Commanders took him off the PUP list. But, he isn't participating in like on-field drills. At least he wasn't over the weekend. And so I'm a little bit concerned about when he's going to be back, if he's going to be back. Both sides seem to be dug in. When you don't participate in camp, when you don't get any snaps in preseason, that concerns me. And when you're talking about a player coming off a career year, and I love to use the term the magical season, I have some concerns about that as well. So as much as I love him as a player and the love situation that he's in, there are some red flags with Terry McLaurin, and that's why he's dropped.
I understand the drop, but to me, wide receiver 30 feels about right because you're not at this point, you're not drafting him to be a top 2 receiver for you. He's like a high-end wide receiver 3. And you're right to have concerns about holding out and the age concerns and all that kind of stuff. But man, it just feels like his game is going to age fairly well. And even if it's only 2 years, I think we're going to project him for the next 2 years as a every week wide receiver 2, if not better. And you look at some of the other receivers in that range, whether it's Mike Evans, who's 3 years older, Or are you going to go with some guys like Jordan Addison, who's clearly the number 2 on his own team, or Jerry Jeudy or Devontae Adams? I like McLaurin. I think I'm willing to pay that price.
Yeah, and when I look at the wide receivers that are going ahead of him too, I mean, I don't have a lot of disagreements. You know, I mean, Tyreek Hill is 31 and he's not coming off a great season, so maybe. But Tyreek Hill also, you would think, has a higher ceiling, especially with Jonnu Smith no longer in the mix, eating up targets.
I would take McLaurin over Olave.
So Olave is another one. Even though he's younger, you have to be concerned about A, the quarterback position is a disaster, and B, if he gets one more concussion, let's pray that he doesn't, his career could be over.
Plus, the great Devon Vele is there now to take targets.
Oh my gosh, the great Devon. How about that this week? Like with these wide receiver trades, like Sky Moore getting. And we're going to talk about the Niners. They are a disaster.
Yeah, we'll talk about them.
They are an abject disaster right now.
So real quick, let's finish up on Terry McLaurin. At wide receiver 30, is that a price that you would
I think that's fine. I think that's ballpark for him. Yes. Again, the players at wide receiver based on the ADP that are ahead of him, I don't have a lot of disagreements with them.
All right, let's talk about those 49ers receivers. Brandon Aiyuk, one of the biggest losers in the month of August, which it's interesting. We knew that he was probably going to miss the first 6 weeks of the season anyways, coming off this injury. So I'm not sure what's changed, but he's all the way down to wide receiver 44. He's dropped 18 spots total in his ADP in 1 month. And yet, Fabs, I gotta say, even at wide receiver 44, I'm just not interested in the slightest.
I look at some of the players that he's going behind, and I mean, Calvin Ridley's 30. Aiyuk is 27. So I'm just saying, like, where you can make an argument that maybe Aiyuk should be going ahead of him. Chris Godwin's 29, coming off of multiple ankle surgeries. I mean, maybe. But other than that, maybe Devontae Adams because he's 32. But I think you're drafting Devontae Adams as knowing that he's going to be kind of like a 1 year type of dude, maybe 2 year type of dude.
Yep.
I don't see a lot of players that I'm like, nope, darn it. There's no way that I would draft, that player over Brandon Aiyuk. He's got a little stink on him in fantasy. And we mentioned that he's unlikely to be back before week 6. And when you also think about having to build up to get to where maybe he was a couple of seasons ago, 80% of that, is that going to happen after mid-season? Because, I mean, the targets will be there, but you have to worry how much of his playmaking ability got left on the operating room table, when you're talking about repairing an ACL. And maybe the recovery's been a little bit longer than we in the fantasy world, being that we aren't doctors, we think this is a bit of a red flag. And he's still young. I mean, he's 27 years old. He's had a couple of 1,000-yard seasons, so he's shown some flashes. But you also think about how there were, trade rumors about him, and I don't know what his standing is in San Francisco. I know he got the contract, and I probably and maybe even definitely are regretting doing that at this point. Mm-hmm. But Aiyuk is part of a bigger problem in fantasy when it comes to the 49ers, because their wide receiver group is a disaster right now. Ayuk's going to be out at least the first 6 weeks. At least. Juwan Jennings has got a calf injury. He also wants a contract. And
is that like having a bad back? Like
Mike, or right, exactly right. I mean, air quotes. I don't know that he's actually hurt. Yeah. Jacob Cowing is not practicing. Jordan Watkins is out. Demarcus Robinson just got suspended for 3 games. They may bring Jerry Rice out of retirement.
No, they basically did. They got Sky Moore in a trade.
So I mean, like that. So Aiyuk, where he's going, I think it's ballpark. I don't see like many guys that I would think, I'd rather have that player over Aiyuk in terms of the 43 players that are going ahead of him based on ADP right now. And in turn, Ricky Pearsall's ADP is going, I don't know if it's going through the roof, but
wide receiver 36.
It's certainly improving. Yeah.
One of the biggest risers. I'm going to give you a list of some receivers that I would take over Brandon Aiyuk right now in Dynasty Leagues. Juwan Jennings, his teammate, Michael Pittman, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Trey Harris, Kyle Williams. And that's probably it. But again, I'm valuing him as like a wide receiver four at this point. Wide, I mean,
it's also not a bad thing, because in a year maybe he's going to be a bargain. Maybe you would have gotten him, and it's actually not a bad move, because that first year off of an ACL for a lot of these players, no matter what sport it is tough.
It is tough.
And so then you have to bring in, he's going to miss time. He's got to build himself back up. By the time, like I mentioned, he's maybe 80% of what he was a couple of years ago. Maybe you're looking at week 12? So this move to acquire Aiyuk is not a move that you should think is going to help you in 2025. It's a future move where he can potentially move back up into that wide receiver 2 range in the future. And I don't even know if that's going to happen, but I think that's the mindset you have to have with him.
All right, let's talk about one more player whose dynasty value has gone out of control over the last month. And now I'm kind of starting to buy maybe a little bit more than I thought I would. Let's talk about Christian McCaffrey next.
Geez Louise, no.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything: cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what will actually work for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. But that is where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on what you saw on social media. I found that therapy has helped me with some coping skills, and they've helped me with some boundary stuff that I need to set. So talk it all out with BetterHelp. It's easy to fit in your schedule. You can just click to connect, and you can even switch therapists anytime if you need to. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. NFL fantasy draft season is here. So for your second listen, go check out the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast with Vinny Iyer and Michelle Majuk. Listen every day to prep for your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so you can take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Fabs, let's talk about Christian McCaffrey. He is up 14 spots over the last month. He's up to 30th overall, RB11. At one point, he was was available in like the 50s in dynasty drafts during the summer. And I got to say, I'm starting to buy him a little bit more as we get closer and closer to the season. I know you have some concerns, but are you interested in this at all?
No. Why? I listen, he's and I understand how great he's been, but 3 of the last 5 years, he hasn't really helped you much. And last year he played 4 games, and the games he played, he averaged 12 points per game. He wasn't that good. And you're looking at a player who's 29 years old. You're drafting him ahead of Chase Brown and Travion Henderson and Kyren Williams. No, why? For 1 year? Listen, Derrick Henry and what he's doing, like, that dude's a unicorn. He's a monster. He dishes out more punishment than he gave. Guys, when they hit 30, 31, typically don't put up great numbers. And where you're drafting McCaffrey, anything short of like a 250 to 275 point season, I feel like is a disappointment. And if you look back at the last like 25 years, how many 29-year-old running backs have actually hit that mark? I think there's maybe a dozen. And one of them was Priest Holmes, who had 440 fantasy points when he was 29 years old. Oh, I loved Priest Holmes, man. He was so awesome. But we're talking about Marshall Faulk. We're talking about LaDainian Tomlinson. We're talking about some of the elite. And McCaffrey has been that. And I will not take that away from him. But listen, man, it's once bitten, twice shy. It's Charlie Brown kicking the football, and Lucy picks it up, and he falls on his rear end. Everyone's just jumping on McCaffrey like this guy has not missed most of 3 of the last 5 years and didn't look great in the 4 games he played last season. I'm just there's too much risk for me for a pick that high, Marcus, where I'm running a long-term team, not running a team for 1 season. And if I'm drafting Christian McCaffrey that high, I should be expecting 2 or 3 at least really good years from him, and you are not going to get it. And that's why I don't understand why Christian McCaffrey is rising. It's hype. It's the name. I understand how great he's been in the past. What have you done for me lately? That's what I want to know. And what can you do for me in the future? Do you think Christian McCaffrey can be a 20-point per game player ever again in his career? I have my doubts.
I think he can, and I think he will every game that he stays healthy. I think that's what he's going to average.
Well, that's a big hell of an if right there, brother.
Well, you're right, and that's why you can get Christian McCaffrey at the price tag he's at right now. There are only here. Let me throw it to you. How many players this year are eligible, or do you think could actually lead their position in scoring? Like, because at receiver, I only think there's like 5 guys that could finish as number 1 receiver, right? Mm-hmm. Chase, Jefferson, CD, Puka, Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Anybody else you want to throw in there?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. Running back, it's Bijan, Bijan, Gibbs. I don't even think Genti could do it this year. Saquon Barkley, if he does it again. Maybe Jonathan Taylor. And Christian McCaffrey is that guy. And for me, the price at 30th overall, RB11, it's attractive enough where if I'm trying to win right now, I want McCaffrey because he's just going to give me one of the biggest advantages week over week in fantasy football. And it's not like I'm having to give up, elite players to get him. We've got some recent trades where he's getting traded for like Trey McBride or Xavier Worthy straight up, or a 2026 first round pick. And it's like, I'm willing to take on that risk to get somebody who could truly change fantasy football for me this year.
So, right, this year. And you're hoping for this year. So, but why would you take a player that high in a dynasty league for hoping that he puts up big numbers in 1 year?
Because ultimately the goal is to win a championship, right? And I think if you can get McCaffrey and stack him with like Gibbs, right? You're talking about somebody who's going 3rd overall, somebody who's going 30th. If I can have those 2 guys on my team, you're just not going to beat me when they're healthy. And if they get banged up and McCaffrey doesn't stay healthy, it's okay. Nobody's going to remember who got 6 in your league anyways. It's all about who got first. McCaffrey gives you a really good chance to get there.
He also gives you a really good chance to have a really big time struggle on your hands, much like anybody who drafted him last season will attest.
There's also no running backs there to like every running back on this team is banged up outside of Christian McCaffrey, which is ironic. I wonder, we talked about the receivers, like they might not want to do this, but they just might have to load McCaffrey up with 1 million targets early in the season just to get by.
I think there's going to be a stretch where McCaffrey looks great, and ultimately he's going to disappoint at the end of the season, whether he misses time or maybe he wears down because of the heavy workload, because the Niners have no offensive weapons besides McCaffrey, Kittle, and maybe Pearsall. Pearsall has not proven a thing in the NFL yet. And we in the fantasy community are all banking on the fact that the opportunities and the targets are going to be enough for him to potentially make a big move up statistically. But McCaffrey is also a player that defenses know is going to get the football. And if there's not other players that they have to really concern themselves with in terms of coverage, McCaffrey could find himself seeing a lot of stacked boxes this season and potentially a lower yards per carry average than maybe he's had in the past in his career. This Niners offense might not be good. Like, I know it sounds really insane. Their number 1 wide receiver right now is unproven. The talent is there. Of course it is. He is unproven. And Ricky Pearsall himself is not durable. He's not been a durable guy. No. Okay. I mean, listen, there's so many question marks about this offense. The offensive line, what about that, Marcus? Is the offensive line going to be that good? Right? There's a lot of questions about that line. Too many questions for me to sink a high draft pick into Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that's just me. I understand the philosophy in that if I can get him and in a pie in the sky scenario, he is great and stays healthy for 15 plus games, then kudos to you. I was wrong, and I will say it all day long that I was wrong. But that's a pie in the sky scenario that you're hoping for. You're not factoring in the offense is going to be bad this season potentially. They have no talent besides McCaffrey and Kittle and maybe Pearsall. We're hoping. Aiyuk's not going to be the same player this season. Who knows if Jennings is going to be back and when he's going to be back. This offense has more question marks maybe than most in the NFL going into week 1.
It's going to be tough. I still like McCaffrey because of what he can potentially do for the upside of your team. So we'll see. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy all of the preseason football. We'll see you right back here on Monday.